This is Live of a PK. My name is Rudy Funwie. According to Herbert Hubert, the only mistake you can ever make is to fear making a mistake. It is rather unfortunate that PKs, on the other hand, try their best not to make mistakes because they have the entire eye on the world on them. Today, we are going to be looking at 5 mistakes PKs always make. And with me in the studio, I have a very important guest that is here to help us with these mistakes. Please do not go anywhere. When we come back, we meet our guest right after this. Welcome back. Have you ever felt like the mistakes you make keep repeating itself, or you feel you're in one tight corner and the entire eyes of the world are on you and you do not know what to do? Sometimes it's difficult to be yourself. Even when you make a mistake, you feel like hiding or killing yourself. There is no need for that. Today on Live of a PK, we are going to be talking about 5 mistakes PK always makes. And with me today in the studio, of course, you see, we have a change of set. We thank our partners, Everemy, for this opportunity to shoot here. Today, we meet someone who is very talented when it comes to sound. He is a sound engineer, and he has a quite enriching profile. He studied at the Academic of Lagos, Nigeria. He has an audio master class training, and he's also a journalist like myself. I'm intrigued when I have to meet people who are of the same field as me. He is a freelance sound engineer, a sound acoustic graphic and still motion graphic pictures, and he has once been an IT officer at Hopec, and of course, a Praise Chapel International personal assistant and a music instructor. There's many more. We get to meet the PK Daniel. You know, here on Live of a PK, we call ourselves PK because it's a show for PK by PKs and for the society to know how to treat PKs. I'm happy to have you.
Nice meeting you.
When we thought of having the show and you came to mind, there were a lot of things that went through my mind because you're one of those people who has stepped out of the norm and you have followed your dreams. I could not go into all of the things you've achieved because it's quite really long and you're somebody that likes to keep it low key. And I want to know, how did you get there as a PK? Take us back memory lane. How was life for you?
Life has been filled with challenges, and they have been a stepping stone to my life. Looking at my environment, at the environment we grew in, I discovered that there are so many problems we face as a PK and as an African. So
how was it like a PK? Can you paint a picture for us?
As a PK, my dad he's somebody who is very committed with his work. And he has always had it in mind to, like, any person that is beside him needs to be a servant of God.
Oh.
So serving as a servant of God.
Now you just dropped it.
Yeah, so as a servant of God doesn't necessarily mean you're a pastor, but you have to be serving God.
Okay, you have not like a pastor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and serving God now requires, God is somebody who is disciplined. And you require discipline in order to do those things.
Discipline as yourself.
Yeah, so my father is a very disciplined man. So, and that has really shaped my life. And from the word of God and from his life, it's a role model.
So, looking back, is there anything you've done as a PK that when you look back at it, you're like, no, I wish I did this different?
I wouldn't say I wish I did it different. I would say I would have loved to go to the extreme of it. That I know more.
You would have loved to go to the extreme. So what's that? Let's know what you wanted to go to the extreme.
I would have loved to be more playful.
Okay, to be more playful. Yeah. So as a PK, you weren't playful?
I wasn't that playful. I suffered, at a certain time, I was suffering from inferiority complex.
Oh, why?
So, there's this stigma of, as a PK, you have to always right. Nobody expected you to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody expected you to make a mistake. And I discovered that while I was growing, I had things I wanted to live not like that, like what people see. I wanted to live like myself. So I had things I had to battle with, but I discovered that I could have done more of those things, and they could have helped me.
You shouldn't have battled with those things. You shouldn't have kept yourself away, and those things would have shaped you. We're talking about 5 mistakes PKs make. PKs like you and myself. So there are things we can relate to, and there are things I'm sure definitely so many people in this studio can relate to. Because let me give it away. We have so many PKs here in the studio. So let's get into it. 5 mistakes PK make.
All right. The first mistakes I would say PKs make is they deny that they are not called as their fathers.
Okay. Now, this is going to create a lot of confusion because we are always like, I am my own person. My father is his own person. I'm just a fruit of law.
That's true.
So when you say we deny that we are not called as our fathers, throw more light.
Now, anything that happens in the house or in the family of a pastor is not by chance. And calling, how do I say calling? God has called everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But he has selected some people out of those he has called. And if God decides to send someone to be a son of a pastor or to be a daughter of a pastor, there is an attachment that he has a calling upon your life.
There is a specific function.
Yes.
That is why you were born into that family.
In that family. So you are automatically called and selected as a PK. It's not like by chance, like, I don't know, my father was called and I was not called. You are automatically, as you are born as a biological son or daughter of that house, you have the same grace that your father has.
Okay, let's take a typical scenario. My father is a preacher. I see myself, I'm using myself for an example. My father is a pastor. I am a journalist. That's how, no matter what you say, I'm host. I'm out there. I'm not secluded to one space. How do we relate this? Because I don't really see myself as a pastor per se.
Okay. Now, as a pastor is just like an icon or an example people are looking up to be able to lead them.
Mm-hmm.
So you now, as a journalist...
Because I'm supposed to have my own calling.
Good.
Not the calling of my father.
Now, the calling of your father now is like, you are a journalist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your father is a pastor, is a preacher.
Mm-hmm.
He stands on the pulpit to preach.
Mm-hmm.
Now, where you are also, you can also serve as a pastor. A pastor is just like a servant. So where you are, you have a responsibility of serving also as your father is serving. So now, your father and you people are a team.
Mm-hmm.
Your father as a pastor preaching on the pulpit, you as a journalist, you also, since you have grown, as he has been there, as a journalist, you also have points where you can support him as a team member.
Mm-hmm.
If you were like, we're talking now, you might tell him that, okay, Daddy, if you are preaching, this is how you have to put yourself, you have to speak like this and stuff like that. And I believe most of the times families have not been living as a team. They have been living like a group.
Oh, okay.
So they have been living like a group. So a difference of a group and a team, it has affected so many places.
So many PKs are affected because they don't live like a team. It's just a group.
A group. So with that one now, it's more of you understanding that the father understands that he's a team member,
mm-hmm.
and the child understands that he's a team member. Not like the father, we're in a group, and my father is a group member, and I'm a group member.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. So as a journalist, you are also called to act as a pastor in your journalism field. Mm-hmm. As a pastor now means you are able to serve others, mm-hmm. you're able to lead others to be a good example.
So wherever you are, however you are, do not make that mistake to think that you are not under the calling of God. The first mistake, like he said, is that we PKs make the mistake to think that we are not called as our fathers. Wherever you are you are a called minister of the gospel. We'll take on this very short break. When we come back, we continue with the 4 remaining mistakes PKs made. Welcome back. Now let's talk the second mistake PKs made.
All right, the second mistake speakers make is they don't believe they can make mistakes.
Okay?
Yes, they believe they are just living their life and they don't believe they make mistakes. It's just their lifestyle.
Right.
Now, I would say like myself, I believe that my father's decision is his decision and mine is my decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe that my father can tell me that I've done something wrong because he's a pastor. And since I'm not a pastor like him on the pulpit, it's not wrong.
Okay.
You understand? So the mistakes they make is like, I do not believe that my father, because he's a pastor, I'm not a pastor. I cannot, the mistake that he's talking about are not my mistakes. Like
so we are vulnerable to mistakes as well.
Yes.
So don't think that you can't make a mistake. When people talk to you about living wrong, you should check and see where the mistake is coming from. Let's go to the third.
Now, the third one is the issue of identity. Most speakers lose their identity. They don't know their identity.
We had a show, one of our shows, we talked about that. And it's quite, it makes me happy that you're bringing this again as one of the mistakes we make. Let's go on.
Now, so the next point, okay.
No, let's throw more light on identity.
Now, as a PK, the identity, first of all, you have an identity of a servant of God, and you have an identity as a son of God.
Explain.
Now,
please do explain.
Now, automatically, as a PK, you are born into the house of a servant of God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and he automatically starts grooming you like a servant.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to tell your father that I don't want to be a servant of God. From the child, he start telling you that you need to pray, you need to serve God, you need to do this. Now, with that information, the Bible says we grow, we are transformed to become sons of God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your father begins to teach you those things for you to be able to accept Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And now to become a son, because God doesn't have grandchildren.
Yeah, that's right.
God doesn't have
right. He doesn't have grandchildren.
Yeah, so
we are all sons before God.
So the aspect of that, you understanding that first of all, you are a servant, and you are also as a son, is something. So going with that mindset that everywhere you go, you are supposed to be serving, and you are also
that is your identity.
And you are also supposed to be a son. Now, a son at this aspect talks about responsibility.
Okay.
You know, there's a difference between a child and a son. A child, he might be like, for instance, a child of a king. He might be a child, he has things, but he doesn't have the responsibility of the authority of speaking over those things or taking control. So now, you now like a son, wherever you go, you have a responsibility of taking things into your hand, of being responsible into putting things into order.
Yeah. So let's move on to the next mistake we make.
Now, the next mistake we make is we want to be like the world. We want to be like the world. Like, for instance, I'm a pastor's kid and I'm like, my father do not have these things. My father do not have big things like I've seen other people have, like the world.
Yes, like it's quite unfortunate that in Africa, in our African background, pastors do not really have access to so many things. And how does that affect us?
No, not that pastors do not have access to those things. The issue is I believe we are supposed to be better than our parents. But being better doesn't mean you have to copy from
you have to copy from the world.
Yes, and from what I've learned in the Bible, I believe that after every generation, there's a better version of the person that comes. And
so I should be better than my parents. As a PK, I have to be better.
Yeah, so and that comes with you understanding that there's something that you need to become better than your parents. And that thing that you need to become better than your parents is a personal encounter. Now, encounters matter. The encounters that your father had with Christ and God is a different encounter that you have.
That you're going to have. But I want us to go back to what you said about wanting to be like the world. You first of all said we are vulnerable to mistakes as PKs. And when you say we want to be like the world, doesn't mean that we cannot make those mistakes because...
No, since Adam sinned, we know that we cannot make mistakes. We can make mistakes. But the issue is after the mistakes, what happens next? For me, I don't consider them as mistakes. I consider them as lessons I've learned from situations. I consider them as experiences I've learned. What have I learned from that experience? Have I learned a good lesson or have learned a bad lesson?
Or did you just go through it and had no time to learn lessons?
So, and the challenges I face in life, I've learned so many lessons. I've learned forgiveness. I've learned love. Like trying to be like somebody, like let me go and explore. When I've discovered that inside God, I've learned love. I've learned to grow in pain.
That's deep.
Yeah, to grow in pain, like, Apostle Paul said, for as he's happy that he's going through the pain Christ went through. You discover that time as a PK, you go in the world, you meet things that you could not imagine that a human being could do it. Like somebody betrays you in a way like, how can a human being betray me like this?
Betray me like this.
And
it's all because we are trying to be like the world.
Now, and as a pastor, going to a pastor's house, they'll tell you that, see, that you have to love, you have to do those things. And in their father's house, they always try to show you the love. They don't show you those things. But when you go out there, you don't want to be in that environment. You want to be like somebody that is more. That's when you meet the real pain that maybe somebody in your house might have not done it to you. And you discover that, hey, this thing has happened because I have learned that inside this pain, I can still love.
You can still love. So what's the fifth mistake as we wrap up?
Now, the fifth mistake now is not accepting correction from any other person. So there's a stage in life where you get...
And PKs go through that a lot. They just shut everybody out. That brings a lot of questions to my mind. Is it because we are too judgmental on PKs that makes them not to accept, that makes them to fall into this error of not accepting correction from anybody?
Now, I'll look at it fundamentally from the way a home comes out. As my own experience, I've been taught to listen more
and talk less.
So, and in our family, you are bound to respect somebody.
All right.
Whether the person is one day older than you. So, anytime somebody speaks to you, first of all, I'm afraid. I'm afraid. So, and like I said earlier, I was suffering from inferiority complex. Not because I love to be so bad. I discovered that I had that pressure, like somebody speaks to me. Because of that respect, I first become afraid.
Yes, you cannot respect.
So I often try to block. But as I've grown up, I've discovered that as I've read...
That's a mistake.
It's a mistake that I don't need to block. I need to really receive what is happening. I need to have an understanding of what is happening.
As he was talking, I believe that you got all of the ways through which he said we could overcome these mistakes. But above all, never in your life block correction. Always have somebody that can talk to you as a PK and you listen. Please don't feel that you can't make mistakes, because that is one of the errors we make. We are vulnerable to mistakes as well. This is Life of a PK. And I am Rudy Daniel. Thank you so much for coming. We were so graced and blessed that you could leave all the way from Yaoundé to our studios. Ablaze, we say thank you. And we thank you so much for dishing this to our audience. We'll see you next time. God bless you. Stay safe.